Hi, everybody. I'm Essex County Commissioner Brendan Gill, also honored to be the chair of the Montclair Dems. We're excited to present the interviews with Mary Alice Williams. This year, there is no more important election across the country than the race to become the next governor of the state of New Jersey. I'm proud to lead this great statewide organization made up of over 12,000 volunteers who help to elect our Democratic candidates up and down the ballot. In order to educate our members, as well as the public, the Montclair Dems is proud to produce a series of long-form, one-on-one interviews with all 6 Democratic candidates for governor. We are privileged to have legendary broadcast journalist Mary Alice Williams conducting these interviews. Today we are joined by former Senate President Steve Sweeney. Senator Sweeney represented the 3rd Legislative District in New Jersey for 20 years, and he served as president of our state Senate for 12. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Alice Williams and Senator Steve Sweeney.
Thank you, Brendan. With me is Steve Sweeney, 20 years in the state Senate, more than half as Senate president. Why do you want to be governor?
Because I love New Jersey, and it is the greatest state in the nation. But we have problems that need to be fixed, and I don't want to do anything but run for governor. I'm not looking to run for president, which many governors over the years, as soon as they became governor, they wanted to be president. Look, New Jersey's too expensive, and we have to really make some really difficult decisions.
What challenge did you face in Trenton that positioned you uniquely to be governor, do you think?
Well, I'm the only one that's running right now that knows where the lights in the bathrooms are.
That's true.
And what I mean, and for the people that are listening, I know how to work with a legislature. Every governor I've ever dealt with, the first 2 years it's a learning curve. It's new. They don't know what's going on. And what winds up happening is by the time they figure it out, they're running for re-election. So dealing with the difficult things to do normally doesn't get addressed.
The buzzword for the 2025 campaign is affordability.
Yeah.
Right? Property taxes up, utility costs rising 20%. How do you make living here more affordable?
Well, policy matters. I mean, I give Governor Murphy a lot of credit. He had a very aggressive policy to reduce pollution in the state. But what's happened is we actually reduced generation of power in New Jersey as demand increased. At one time, New Jersey used to send energy outside of the state because we produced enough in here.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we got out over our skis a little bit. You know, they shut down gas plants and some coal plants. And look, no one's done more about clean energy than me. I did RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. I wrote the law for solar. I wrote the law for offshore wind. I wrote the law for nuclear plants to stay open. But without gas right now, you can't afford this other energy that we have. So most importantly is immediately getting back into the energy policy about generation of power in the state of New Jersey. And government has to be done differently too. It's too expensive here.
You brought up energy, climate. Congress has just cut $217 million in federal funding for 212 New Jersey projects that address climate change, along with the jobs that would have created. Could you resurrect any of those projects without federal help?
Yeah, I think we could do it through the EDA. There's programs that we could replicate through the EDA. You also have the Infrastructure Trust Act, where depending on what the project is, that you could probably utilize also.
Corporate taxes and federal funds pay for highway repair, bridge replacement. Amtrak pays for NJ Transit. How much power does a governor have to improve infrastructure?
A huge amount of power, because if you make it an issue that you want to address, you put the power of the governor's office behind it, and you can actually address things. The governor's a pretty strong position in this state.
But it takes money. How are you going to raise money?
Well, listen, the gas tax funds the roads and bridges, as we know. We passed the CBT. In fact, it was Loretta Weinberg and myself called on it, a dedicated funding source for New Jersey Transit they passed, which I'm very happy they passed, but I'm very concerned at the same time because they haven't constitutionally dedicated the funding, which means in 3 years, mark my word, the $1 billion that they got for transit, if not dedicated, will be gone.
The job of governor is going to require some really hard choices uniquely this time around. Governor Murphy's indicated that between federal funding freezes and outright cuts, the state, which already has the highest business and property taxes in the nation, could stand to lose $27.5 billion. Would you raise taxes?
You can't, number one, you couldn't raise taxes enough to replace $27 billion. It's ridiculous to think that you can.
So what are you going to do?
Honestly, we have to look at the budget, and I've done budgets, so I know them very well. You have to look at the budget because they're numbers on a piece of paper, but they're actually people. I think government should be for the people that needs government. I think government needs to be needs to be there for the poor. I think government needs to be there for the disabled, which is very close to me personally, and for seniors. Government can't fix everything for everyone. So we have to prioritize what we have.
So what would you cut?
We got to look at everything. You can't leave anything off the table. You're talking about, if you're talking $27 billion, right? You're talking about cutting half the state budget. Half, which you can't do. There's no way you can do it. And oh, by the way, the biggest spending items are education, the pension payment, and I worked too hard to get that pension payment funded.
Which
to let it
Governor
be cut.
Murphy has been paying.
Which I'm proud, I'm very proud. I have a lot of scars for that pension payment, but we got that pension payment, and Governor Murphy continued to follow through on the commitment that I started to get it. We're at $7.2 billion pension payment when it should be $800 million. So we can't lose track, and we can't lose focus on making sure we pay that. So we can't raise enough taxes to cover if the federal government was to cut $27 billion. Medicaid's going to be cut from everything I read. Well, we have a $6 billion budget surplus. That's what surpluses are for, to deal with.
But can it supplant or replace the Medicaid payments for more than 2 million people in New Jersey?
We could probably cover, I don't think they're eliminating it completely, they're going to cut it. So I think we could, probably $1 billion we could put towards it for now. And then if they're crazy enough to make these cuts in Washington so rich people can get bigger tax breaks, hopefully people will turn out and vote next time against the people that are giving all this money to wealthy corporations and wealthy people at the expense of the working poor and the people that actually need it.
I'm still not hearing you say you're going to raise taxes.
I'm not. I'll give you a simple answer. I'm not raising taxes.
So you not even sin taxes like on gambling or?
No, because the consumer, okay, you want to talk about alcohol tax, that's a middle-class iron worker that's going to a bar, getting a drink, and now he's got to pay more. It's more coming out of my pocket. New Jersey's too expensive to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Fees, sin taxes, whatever you want to call them, are taxes, period. You know, we always in Trenton like these, it's a fee, so it's not a tax.
Yeah, right.
It's a tax. So we have to prioritize what the budget is. You know, the budget grew in a large way, and I don't see the government doing a lot more for people than it was doing before. But we're spending $56 or $58 billion. It's just too much.
Let's talk about housing. First of all, there's a generation of currently 30-somethings now who can't afford to buy a house. And then there's Mount Laurel. There's affordable housing.
Yeah.
Every town's required under the Mount Laurel decision to provide a fair share of that. Last year's law to streamline affordable housing development hit legal and political obstacles. What specific plans do you have to create affordable housing?
Well, first off, young people can't buy houses,
Right.
which means they can't really start their lives where you can
Right.
start to earn or accumulate wealth. That's what we do when you get that first house.
Right.
Because it's too expensive. So what I would do, there's a lot of towns that have affordable housing funds. They're not using them. You know something? The governor has the authority to take those dollars. And I would take those dollars and start using them to build housing. You know, however you want to call it, affordable housing. How come since 1971, the Supreme Court ruled we had to build this housing, that towns have spent millions, if not $1 billion, fighting building more houses, right? Why are they allowed to continue the delay when the courts have already ruled on this? So I would be very aggressive as governor, to be honest with you, because we need housing. My first house was a townhouse. Barely could afford it. I'm an iron worker. My wife was a hairstylist. No one protested me moving into their neighborhood. I wonder why.
Housing has a major impact on our schools, which it's been determined face de facto segregation. The Trump administration cut $1.2 billion in education funding, closed the program that funded Head Start, and another that helped Jersey farmers provide fresh food to schools and food pantries. Our schools are the magnet that draw so many families to our state. How do you shore up and improve public education?
Public education, we have one of the best systems in the
Yeah.
nation. One of the best. But we have too many school districts. We need to do things differently. Every school district in the state should be pre-K to 12. No more K to 2s, no more K4s, 6s, and 8s. What I found out when we were working on school funding is the regional school districts that send to the receiving district, they don't, a lot of times, they don't teach the same math, the same English. They don't teach out of the same books. So now all these kids get to high school and they've all learned at a different pace and different things. So make them a school district. So you don't close the school, but you eliminate the administration, which is where the big price is. You make them all buy the same technology. So if I'm in a school district, Kingsway, where I live, every sending district buys the same software, buys the same books, has one HR office. You know, there's ways to reduce cost. The problem with New Jersey is we like the government we have. We just don't like paying for it. So something has to give in order to make this work better.
And it would improve the schools and cost less?
Absolutely.
Is that what you're saying?
No, because you're teaching across the board equally. And listen, in New Jersey, it's got the 6th most segregated school district in the nation, and that has to do with housing. You know that. It has to do with housing and how affordable housing ever became a dirty word. Because, like I said, I lived in what you would call affordable housing, and I was a hardworking iron worker, and my wife was a hairstylist. So why wouldn't no one objected to me living there? So, you know, we have to break these barriers down. I grew up in a town, Pennsauken in Camden County. It was very diverse racially. And we're the most diverse state in the nation. We're going to be the first majority-minority state in the nation. And we have the 6th most segregated school systems because we send kids to school by address. So we have to create housing to make our communities look more like the state that we live in.
Let's talk about health. You touched on it already. NJ's Family Care Health Program is relied on more than $14 billion in federal funds. That's now in jeopardy. You pointed out the Trump administration and Congress are weighing killing Medicaid. Could you, as governor, fill the gap? I've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you again.
I'm telling you, you can't fill that kind of a gap. And if anyone here says they can, they're not being honest.
So what do we do with sick people?
We would have to try to figure something out, but you're not filling a $14 billion gap. You don't have the money. You can't raise taxes enough to do it. What you do is you get our federal delegation to push back, which to this point, I can't tell you I'm proud of the way Democrats have been in Washington. You know, I watched President Trump's speech, and the Democrats' form of protest was holding up a paddle. That was an embarrassment nationally, for me personally as a Democrat. And then they kick out a congressman who does stand up, and no one follows him out the door. Every single Democrat needs to let that be known. There's only a 1 or 2 vote edge for Republicans in Congress right now. The more pressure we put on Congress and the more Democrats keep pushing back, we should be able to get 1 or 2 of them to do that. I read Jeff Van Drew signed a letter with 12 other Republicans that they will not support Medicaid cuts. That means they can't cut Medicaid. But you know why he signed that letter? If he votes to cut Medicaid, he might as well retire because his district has so many seniors that rely on it. And he has
Jeff's a Republican from the 2nd Congressional District.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of poor people. Cumberland, Salem, they're some of the poorest places in the state that rely on this. That's why he came out and signed a letter. Jeff worries about Jeff. So Jeff signed a letter because Jeff's worried about losing his job.
New Jersey law protects women's health care by guaranteeing the right to abortion and is stockpiling medical abortifactants. Should that law be changed?
I'm the one that passed the law. I was one of the prime sponsors of it, and I was very proud of it. But I'm telling you, we need to codify it. We codified the law. We need to do a constitutional amendment to protect a woman's right to choose. And some of the people are like, well, we're afraid that Elon Musk is going to come in here with a whole bunch of money and it won't work. It won't happen. Well, listen, laws can be, as you know, can be undone very easily. What you legislate can be unlegislated. So my point is, why would you not take the opportunity to codify it in a state like New Jersey? Because no one ever dreamed the Republicans would undo Roe versus Wade, right? No one ever dreamed of it, but they did it. So my point is, let's codify this in the Constitution. Place it in the Constitution
of the United States?
Of the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
Because we can do that. We place it in the Constitution of New Jersey. That way, you've actually protected it. Otherwise, if the Republicans were to get control of the 3 branches of government here, they could easily turn it over. Look, Chris Christie tried to pack the Supreme Court when I was a Senate president. I stopped him from doing that. You see what happens. If you have a Republican Senate president, they're packing the Supreme Court. That's just how it goes if you have a Republican governor. We got to prevent and fight against those things.
Let's talk immigration. The Trump administration is investigating Governor Murphy over his immigration policies and wants to allow ICE to expand a Newark facility to detain more immigrants. How would you ensure protection and due process for undocumented people here?
Well, this is the problem we have right now.
Yeah.
The federal government's violating due process. We can't do what the feds are doing. What they're doing, they're breaking the law. So the only thing that we can do is have our attorney general fight like hell and constantly fight for every New Jersey citizen that has been detained. It's a joke that they're going after Governor Murphy and, they're going to investigate Governor Murphy and the attorney general. Look, I follow the same path that President Obama had when it comes to immigration. There's due process. If you've done something wrong, you're going to go. In fact, President Obama deported more people than any president in history of this country. But he followed the law. These guys are animals. You have a criminal in the White House that's so why is it a surprise that he's breaking the laws? He's broken everything else. So most importantly is doing everything in our power to protect people from their due process being violated.
And is there something we can do, even that the state can do, even though it's a federal issue?
The only thing the state can do is take the federal government into court. Anyone else says there's something else can be done is not being honest.
You've been the leader of the Ironworkers Union for a really long time. Unions have enormous power in the upcoming election. Do they have outsized influence?
No more than any other group. They're exercising their freedom of speech. Look, obviously for me, I would love to see unions vote overwhelmingly in favor for me. But listen, some of the unions have already endorsed other candidates. Unions are just like everyone else. There's a bunch of opinions. The thing called organized labor, that is not true. It's not organized. You know what I mean? And yeah, I've been the head of the Ironworkers Union for a very long time.
Is there a north-south divide in the state of New Jersey?
Something, people like to play it that way. And when I was a Senate president, what I learned, and I'm a big backer of the Hudson-Bergen light rail line, big backer of it. But what happens with budgets, or at least used to happen with budgets, is they pitted us against each other. So if they're
Us meaning the South and the North?
The South, North, and Central. So if someone had a project they wanted that was really important to them, but there was 3 projects that people wanted, one in the Central, they throw enough money for the one, and then there's a scrum. You know what I mean? And there's a scrum, and from that, now it gets personal because one side wins and one side loses. My point, and the reason why I was so successful as president of the Senate for the years I was I made sure that all sections of the state were taken care of.
Give me an example.
Light rail, Hudson-Bergen, light rail, Gloucester-Camden. I made sure there was enough money to do both projects when we did the 2016 Transportation Trust Fund reauthorization. There was enough money. In fact, I pushed Governor Christie at the time to take it from $1.6 billion to $2 billion to ensure the potential to have funding to make both of those things happen.
How would you rate Governor Murphy?
I gave him a C the other day, and you have to understand, it's because I got a lot of C's growing up. So I think he's done a good job. I honestly, Governor Murphy and I started off in a very, very rocky place. And I think with COVID, we both came around to recognize fighting during a crisis like COVID was. That's not what leaders do. Leaders turn and work together to get things done. But I think the governor's done a good job. And a C is not, I said it during debate. I said, what did I say wrong? I said, I got a lot of C's. I thought they were good grades. I was happy with them.
It's sort of average.
Yes.
Governor Murphy's not caved to President Trump's demands. For instance, to eliminate DEI initiatives. If you win, you'll have 3 years, 3.5, to deal with President Trump. How are you going to do it?
When he does something stupid like elimination of DEI, which, by the way, the I is my daughter, inclusion, fight him like hell. You know what I mean? And like I said, like Governor Murphy's doing, he's not backing down, and you shouldn't back down. And God willing, Trump does something good in the next 4 years or 3.5 years. If it's something good, then we work together. Up to this point, this first 100 days, there has been nothing good. And I'm not holding my breath hoping. But listen, it gets very personal with me. When I heard the fight about DEI, no one was even more offensive to me. What RFK said about people with autism. People with autism have the greatest potential.
I know you have a daughter with autism, right?
My daughter, and she's got a piece of autism with it. But people with disabilities get labeled without being given an opportunity and a chance. And nothing is more offensive to me that what happens is you see a person with a disability and you think they can't do anything. Well, they can if given an opportunity. And for Kennedy to say, and Kennedy knows better. His family, he's with the Shrivers, Special Olympics. He knows better. So it's so sickening and offensive what we're dealing with right now.
Fun fact, it's the Republicans' turn. The state of New Jersey, in its history, has never consecutively elected a person from the same party. Murphy's a Democrat. It's the Republicans' turn. Why do you think a Democrat can win?
Because what's going on nationally right now is positioning Democrats in a much better place. I, was a very young man when I used to see protests like we saw in the 60s. You're starting to see protests again in a very big way. And I think that in the midterms, the Democrats are going to win and win big. I didn't think they were going to be able to win the Senate, but it's now starting to look like if they continue to bow down and give Donald Trump and kiss his, you know what, I was going to say kiss something, but kiss his ring, they deserve to be not returned to office. So I think that we have to hold strong to the midterms where we can control these houses back to where we can stop the damage that he's doing. And in the meantime, put as much pressure as we possibly can on the Republicans in Congress. And that means not the policies that the Democrats have come up with, which is we're going to sit back and wait for him to screw up. Well, he's been screwing up from the day he got here. So you can't sit back anymore. You need to step up. You need to speak out. And you need to absolutely take this fight on. Because there's guys like Jeff Van Drew that are getting scared. And we only need to get 2 of them not to vote with them. It's not an insurmountable task. Listen, as a Senate president, I can't tell you how many times I've had some of my members would vote a different way because they felt pressure.
Steve Sweeney.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch the interviews with Mary Alice Williams. Are you looking to take the next step? Then come on and join the Montclair Dems. We're a statewide organization with a network of more than 12,000 volunteers across New Jersey. Please visit themontclairdems.com to start making an impact today. And thanks again for taking a few minutes to join us.